Now is the time, guys. Come on out. So let me just start off by explaining a little bit about the trip to Prague and the concept, how it started, and what we accomplished while we were over in Europe. As Jerry stated, approximately every 5 years, the YMCAs in Europe host a festival that draws, there were over 5,000 youth from countries around the world that attended the festival. And it's really about celebrating various experiences within the YMCA. I think one of the things we definitely took away is no two programs in the YMCA are alike, yet there are things we all share in common. The vision was that Frost Valley would send a group that would be able to be ambassadors, basically, for Frost Valley, for camping in the U.S., and that would be able to share the joy of camping, hopefully reach out to change some of the perceptions that might exist about camping, and also jumpstart YMCA youth around the globe to incorporate a lot of the concepts that we successfully utilize here at Frost Valley into their programs, even non-camp programs. So we left the country on August the 2nd and traveled to Prague with the 8 young leaders that you see before you today. All were former CITs, and then 3 chaperones as well, myself, Jeff, Daly, and Kirsten. And in just a little bit, we're going to have some of the campers actually share their stories and introduce themselves. But we headed to the festival itself on August the 4th and spent the next 6 days in a whirlwind of new faces, workshops, performances, new concepts, and ultimately many new friends. We had, in the end, there were 62 countries represented. The largest contingency that I'm aware of, Sweden, sent about 800 youth to the event. And then, for example, the Gaza Strip had 1 representative. So, wide variety. It was really hard not to meet somebody from a new country every time you went to a new workshop or a new event. We armed the kids with business cards and buttons to hopefully kind of pave the way to a lot of the conversations. But really, one of the highlights for us was that the festival culminated with a presentation by this group of young people on Friday that talked about their story, their time at Frost Valley, our core values, what they're passionate about here, and what their story is. So the other portion of the trip was spent sightseeing and really delving into European culture and history. We got to see some of the most stunning monuments and landmarks in Europe. We saw the Charles Bridge, the astronomical clock, the Prague Castle, and the Old Town Square. We made it out into the countryside and got to see the Moravian Karst, which is a system of caves. I can tell you there was a moment during that trip that all 11 of us were completely speechless at the natural beauty of the Czech countryside. We saw shops, restaurants, we enjoyed traditional Czech cuisine such as goulash and fried cheese, and we learned a lot about Czech history, how it survived through the world wars and the communist times, and we learned about a term called defenestration. I'm not going to explain what that is, but any one of these guys will be happy to tell you that if you ask them after the presentations today. In the end, this trip can really be defined in 3 concepts: community, culture, and camp. We experienced community with each other. We bonded on the trip. We experienced community with other youth in Europe, and ultimately understanding a little bit better about community in the YMCA as a whole and what Frost Valley's role is within the YMCA. We learned about culture that is very different from ours, yet very unique and wonderful. And we were able to share what makes our camp here at Frost Valley so unique and inspire others about camping in the YMCA. So with that, I want to introduce you to our Prague 2013 campers and invite a couple of them to come up and share their experience with you.
So I'm Leo Wilson, and I went on the Prague trip, and I was asked to talk about what workshops I went to, because I really liked them, and Jeff and Vicky and Kirsten thought that they really shaped my experience. So at the festival, I went to 2 very interesting and culturally driven workshops, as well as assisting in running our own. The first workshop I went to was run by a man named Gustav from YMCA Umeå, which is in Sweden. It was called Democracy Challenges, and it started out with thought-provoking and interesting discussion about the benefits and deficits of democracy. Then we looked at how democracy is implemented in different YMCAs across the world, including Sweden, Norway, Switzerland, Russia, and America, obviously. All the people who talked were very knowledgeable about their YMCAs, and when I got back here, I actually asked our president, Mr. Vaughn, about what makes up our democracy at Prague, which is pretty interesting. We're talking about that. The second workshop was called What's Up, and it was run by the Asian Pacific YMCAs. They actually have the organization of Asian Pacific YMCAs. It was run by a Sri Lankan man named Roger, who's been part of the YMCA for I think the past 20 years. At the workshop, we learned a traditional Sri Lankan game called Wolf and Go, and a Singaporean team building exercise called Kiaso. Pretty fascinating. Workshop, it was interesting because it was the largest culmination of different cultures that I experienced in a small location at the festival. There's so many different people from so many different countries. There were people from Japan, Singapore, Sri Lanka, Malaysia, Germany, Norway, Spain, Russia, and of course the USA. Finally, during our presentation, we had a whopping 9 participants. We were very proud of that. And we actually had a blast. We walked them through Hoopla. We explained our 8 core values and what they mean to us. And we led them through a Devo, Rosebud Thorn, which is, if any of you are former campers, you know Rosebud Thorn. It's pretty standard Devo. And to finish our workshop, we had a very own line hunt that I ran. I think we did good with it. Not Pokemon level. Through these workshops, I heard about many different cultures in a very short period of time. From European democracies to Wolf and Go, which you actually create a fence to keep goats out. Or wolves out. It was truly a rare and special opportunity that I was glad to be part of. Thank you.
I guess I'll go next. So, aside from the fact of Prague's sheer utter beauty and perfection, I guess the trip was alright, you can say. But I personally am a really big fan of history, and like going to another country, I've never really been to another country before, and like I studied European history in school this previous year, and I thought it was really interesting to see all the different cultural ideas that were shared throughout the touring of the city, not in particularly the festival, although the festival is really nice. So, when the festival, like the first day of the festival got delayed, because there was a huge storm the day before, so we were able to look around the city a little bit, and the first day we went on the St. Charles Bridge, and it was probably the most magnificent thing I've ever seen in my entire life. There's little, like, while you're walking down the bridge, on, like, both sides of you, there's statues that are, like, adorned with gold, and there's, like, a flowing, serene river underneath you, and, like, you're just like, what? It's gorgeous. And Vicky mentioned before how we went to the caves one day, and we saw this, like, when you go into the caves, it was, like, in the countryside of Prague, and there were stalactites that were, like, dripping. And our tour guide told us that it took like approximately like 100 years for just like a little millimeter to grow on the stalactite. It was like amazing, beautiful sight. And when we went into like this abyss area from the cave, it was just like heaven. Like there was heavenly music playing. You walked out into the abyss and there was like a little gorgeous blue pond, like this periwinkle color that I've never seen before. And just like if you looked up, there was like sunshine coming down onto the trees, and it was amazing. And I think like one of the main cultural things that were different with Prague were the buildings by far, because each building was different and special in its own way. Because like when you're walking down the street in the Old Town Square, you'll see like tons of different things coming at you. There's like a building with like pink, and then like a building right next to it in blue, and then like so on and so forth. And the I think one of the difficult things that, cultural-wise, was the language barrier that we face in Prague. Like, we went to silver mines one day, and the silver mines, when we went into like a little shop, it was a little ceramic shop. There was this old woman who did not speak a word of English. She only spoke, "I don't understand." And I went in and bought a magnet, and then I accidentally dropped the magnet and it shipped. So I went back to her and I'm like, "Oh, would you be able to fix it?" She's like, "I don't understand." And so I got the tour guide to come and translate for me to say "Oh, well, maybe I could get another thing, blah blah blah." And it was just really interesting. And I have to say, just to finish it off, because I'm just rambling, and just to end it off on a nice note, my favorite part of the Prague trip was when, after we had stayed in the hostel, which was quite something, right around the corner, we had no idea, our tour guide took us up to this, we would walk up the stairs, and you imagine this whole wine yard, grape vines, and then the whole entire city in your view, and you never know what's right around the corner from you. And that's
Hey, I'm Dyami. I don't really have anything written, so just bear with me. Okay, so we showed up at the festival, the Y Festival, and we were told it was going to be an 80% chance of rain, but there were no clouds, so we're just, it's not going to rain. So everyone was just running around, getting into the swing of things, international gaga, and then the sky turned black, and then there were leaves flying everywhere, and people almost got struck by lightning, and there was water falling from the sky. It was intense, and we were all running around trying to find Jeff and those people, and so it was just the 8 of us, because we didn't know where Jeff, Vicky, or Kirsten were, and they were trying to find us. So we had to go underneath some bridge just to stay moderately dry, and we were trying and failing not to panic, and then we were like, "Oh my God, what are we gonna do?" And so, but everyone else gathered into their own countries and started doing cheers and keeping up the spirits. And so at that moment, I was thinking wow, this isn't cheers and this isn't only a Frost Valley thing. This is a Y thing. And so it was the moment where I really felt it all come together and everyone united, fight the storm. And so that made me feel more comfortable for the rest of the week to just walk around and just talk to people. And I think out of the 60-something countries, I ended up getting to 40, and which is a lot. And I couldn't find the one lady from Gaza Strip, but I found a bunch of other people in the process. And just getting to they're teenagers my age from Iceland and Senegal and all these different places, and it was trippy because they were all just like me. They all had problems. They all listened to the same music, and it's just cool because I had conversations with kids about musicians I listened to and how they affected both of us in really similar ways. And it's just something that I thought would never happen, and it made me feel special because it made me feel like I was part of this big YMCA movement, and it's something huge, and it's shaping the world, and it's because it's touching so many people in so many different places. It was nuts, but it was amazing.
So how do you wrap this all up? An amazing experience that transcended thousands of miles and millions of raindrops and hundreds of cultures. The end of the festival, all of the delegates from the United States met together. There was over 500 of us from all different parts of the U.S. New York, Pittsburgh, Michigan, Kansas, Atlanta, a very passionate group from Atlanta. And we were processing, what did you get out of it? What were some things that shocked you, and kids were standing up and saying, it was quite shocking to have to pay money to use a public restroom, or a whole variety of different things. And talking about the different cultures of people that everyone was meeting. And a kid in the Y stood up and he said, I met some people from the Kosovo riots. And they said, when he said, I'm from America, the kid said, I love Americans. They saved our lives. And when that one kid shared that moment amongst those 500 people in that room, most of which were not born when this was happening, it really shook the room. It really kind of opened up the impact of how we're viewed as both as individuals as well as also a country, but also kind of really brought that home. And how do you take this experience, you go through it, and what happens? Does it become, when you get back to the United States and you have the comforts of home, do the memories eventually fade off into that time that you remember when you went to Prague and you remember something about a hostel? But then all memories begin to get fuzzy. We asked that question of how do we continue this impact? And Jerry said something at the beginning that kind of resonated with me, and I hope the rest of the group had caught it. He talked about this place being magic. And I want to just say to the group as we wrap it up, there's magic in each of you. You guys have had some really amazing experiences, meeting different cultures, seeing different parts of the world, having a whole new perspective that at your age, in the 15, 16-year-old age group, not just going on to in the future of Frost Valley as future counselors, but also moving on in the rest of your life, you have such an amazing impact that the potential that everything you touch can turn to gold. You've got the magic in you to make a difference. That was a song that we all were singing. It just eerily worked out really well. A bunch of Americans on public transportation in Prague singing from Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody to all these things. But it's really up to us to make a difference with this experience, and to thank everybody. This is an amazing place where we were honored to represent Frost Valley and kind of move on. I want to thank you guys. I want to thank you all. I learned so much about each of you, and I learned a lot about myself in this trip. And I'm really excited that we survived the trip, the storms, the hostel, the food, everything that was there, and it was great. And thank you very much.